Good morning, dear students. Today, I'm just talking about the concept of basis terminologies in relational database. Relational, as we have earlier discussed, that relational is where there is a relationship in between data. My dear respected students, there is this one is to be considered as very easy topic. You are supposed to concentrate only on the content. First of all, when we just talk about a relational database, as earlier we talk about that this is the concept of relations in between different tables. Here it is, they also mention a relational database is a type of database that stores and provides access to data points that are related to one another, where we are just going to mention that these are the collection of tables which is supposed to be related with each other. I'm just going to give you a practical demonstration for the same. I'm just going to give you a practical demonstration for the same. And what we are going to do here is I'm just going to open a SQL. I'm just going to type the password. And here it is, my dear respected students, as here we discussed that this is a concept of relational database where there is a relation in between the tables. What I am going to do, I'm just going to open don't worry, I'm just going to explain each and everything with practicals also. But here it is, I'm just going to interrelate my theory with my practical concept. I'm just going to display the content of describe. First of all, I'm just going to show tables here. I'm just going to hit here, show tables. Here it is the list of tables. Now I'm just going to display select star from, here it is a student, one thing. After that, I'm just going to type select star, okay, from, next is teacher. My dear respected students, kindly concentrate here. One of the most important aspect where we are supposed to discuss here is, in case we are talking about a table that is a teacher, when we talk about a table that is a teacher, here it is when we talk about a TID, which is a column, which creates a relationship with a table that the name of the table is student, and here it is SID student ID, S name student name, whereas TID representing that this student is related with or linked with a particular teacher, where the code of that particular teacher is 101, and here it is in the table of teacher, it shows that the teacher ID 101 is assigned to Mr. Kawaljeet Singh. So hope the concept of relational database will be clear now with the help of these two examples. One is a student and second is a teacher, where we define TID within a teacher's table, and same ID is supposed to be used with a student table. So the relationship is being established. And as earlier we have discussed that we are supposed to talk about the concept of primary key as well as origin key with a practical demonstration which make this concept more clearer. Now, I'm just moving towards a theory portion. Here it is one important thing when we talk about a relation itself is a table. Remember this thing, when we talk about relation is also to be considered as a table. And as earlier we have also discussed in our previous classes that table is a collection of two different things. One is to be called as row and second is to be called as a column. When we talk about horizontal concept, that is to be called as rows, and when we talk about a vertical column, that is to be vertical portion, that is to be called as a column. But remember here, when we talk about the concept of relational database, the most appropriate word which representing a row, which is to be called as a tuple. And remember, Here it is, tuples is also to be called as rows. One more thing, we can call tuples or rows as records. So here it is, three different words for row, including row, that is row, records, and tuples. Whereas when we talk about the concept of columns, columns is also to be considered as the attribute. So it means that whether we called it as column or whether it is called as an attribute, the same, both will be considered as same. But in SQL, the most appropriate word for the same is attributes. Next, my dear respected students, we just talk about, again, there is a basic terminologies and one very important thing which is to be called as an entity. And again with a practical demonstration, I'm just going to display here, show tables and semicolon and hit the enter key. All these tables which is there in your database, in your particular database, these tables are called as entity. सरल शब्दों में इसका व्याख्यान ये है कि जो आपके डाटाबेस के अंदर टेबल्स उपस्थित हैं, अवेलेबल हैं, उनको हम क्या कहेंगे, which is also to be called as a entity. Now just move towards a theoretical portion here. As mentioned here, entity is something that exists and about which we can store some information. वो चीज जिसके अंदर कुछ हम इंफॉर्मेशन डालने की कोशिश करें, वो चीज जिसके अंदर कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन हो, that particular thing is to be called as an entity. And most appropriate thing for remembering this thing, that the name of the table is to be called as a entity. Same thing what we have done in practical demonstration with SQL or MySQL. Here it is displayed on the screen, that tables in Aman, these are the three different tables. Now, my dear respected students, as we know, as we learned in the previous slide, that attribute is simply to be called as a column. What it makes sense in a relational table, attribute is a set of values of a particular type. For example, when we called it as that it stores a value of a particular type. Here in table, here when we display a table, for example, I am just going to display the table teacher here. It means TID. I am just going to mention described teacher here, semicolon, and hit the enter key. It says that teacher TID, here type is mentioned here, which says that it only stores the type of data that is integer. Whereas when we talk about a T name, it is supposed to be enter a data in a varchar format. Varchar stands for variable type character. Next is T subject. The teacher subject is again in the variable type character, whereas teacher designation is again in the variable type character. So it means it says that attribute stores a particular kind of value. For example, T name is an attribute and it's only storing the name of the teacher, whereas T subject is storing the subject of the teacher in a string format, whereas TID storing a ID of a teacher in a integer format, whereas T designation, that is a teacher designation, is supposed to be stored the designation of the teacher in a string or in a variable type character format. My dear students, hope now attribute will be clear, and the display that attribute is also to be called as a column, and they display that these are the columns. We talk about a teacher table. Here the demonstration is for a student table. SID is a column, S name is a column, TID is a column, and S class, that is a student class, is again a column. Remember, Attribute is also to be called as column, and column is vice versa is also to be called as an attribute. Now, my dear students, next terminology, which we have already discussed in the previous slide, that is a tuples. Tuple says, tuple says that tuples is basically to be called as a records, or in a simple words, which is also to be called as a rows. Similarly mentioned here that row within a table is called as tuple, which is also to be called as rows and records, whereas there is a practical demonstration of that particular here, which says these are the different tuples. My dear respected students, I just want to give a practical demonstration here. For this, I'm just going to, hopefully, if I'm correct, I'm just going to enter S data 3 and hit the enter key. Now, remember one thing, when my dear respected students, when we talk about these things, these are called as attributes. And when we talk about this thing, that is a horizontally, we can consider it as. Now, these are the rows. These are the rows. As when we start counting in the in next slides, we are supposed to discuss about the number of rows and number of columns. So remember, these are the number of rows and these are supposed to be considered as a number of columns or attributes. Next says very important thing, which is supposed to come in 1 marks or 2 marks questions. Is supposed to be considered as a theoretical portion, I think so, in a part of SQL. Here it is, it says a degree of relation. What we make sense of that thing, that what do you understand by a degree of a relationship? Here it is, my dear respected students, whenever they talk about the degree of a relation, it makes sense that they are talking about a number of columns or attributes which is there in the table. In this practical demonstration, they are talking about, they are saying that there are 4 different types of columns. If questions come and they give example of this particular table and they ask that you are supposed to mention the degree of relation, it means the degree of relations, we are supposed to mention it as, now the degree of that particular relation is to be considered as, can I count this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So, oh, sir, you are doing the wrong thing. Sir, you are counting rows. But students, what we are supposed to count? We are supposed to count the columns. Number 1 is R number. Number 2 is name. Number 3 is age. And number 4 is city. So it means degree of relationship for this particular table is considered as 4. Now, next concept, my dear respected students, it says a cardinality of a relation. Cardinality means the number of records, number of rows, number of tuples which is there in that particular table. And here it is, they mentioned the same thing. What I am just going to elaborate, the number of rows, number of records, number of tuples. And here it is, when we talk about, now this table says that this table having how many records? 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, it means it says that the cardinality of a relation is 11 because cardinality of relation representing a row, record and tuple, whereas degree is to be represented, degree of relation is representing as a number of columns. My dear respected students, here it is, the last thing and we're talking about is the concept of domains here. Okay, here it is, my dear respected students, kindly consider one very important thing here. I'm just going to elaborate this thing with the help of a example first, and then we are supposed to discuss the discuss the theoretical portion. Here it is, my dear respected students. Here it is, I'm just talking about the concept here. When we talk about the concept of age, I'm just going to discuss each and everything here. When we talk about the age and somebody is going to ask me the domain of that particular field or attribute, that is age. So in that case, we says that any number, for example, if we talk about this table only, then the domain begins from a age that is 16, sorry, because 16 is a smaller number, and the highest number will be 45. So only if we take the example of this particular table, so age having a domain means उसके अंदर age के अंदर कौन कौन सी values available हैं, that should begins from a 16 and ends till 45. Similarly, if we talk about a city, so domain will be Fagwada, Jalandhar and Guraya, because we're talking about only about these three cities. Here it is, if we talk about the concept of R number, it begins from a 2 and till 15 it goes. So there is a domain that it begins from a 2 till 15. मेरे सरल शब्दों में इसका व्याख्यान करने का अर्थ ये है, वो नंबर जो स्मॉलेस्ट से लेके लार्जेस्ट तक है, उस चीज को हम कहेंगे डोमेन. दैट थिंग इज टू बी कॉल्ड एज अ डोमेन. इस चीज को हम डोमेन कहेंगे. अब कृपया करके थ्योरेटिकल पोर्शन पे आने की कृपालता कीजिए. कहता है इट डिफाइंस द काइंड ऑफ डाटा रिप्रेजेंटेशन बाय द एट्रीब्यूट. जिस प्रकार का डाटा वो दिखा रहा है, बिल्कुल सही है. द सेट ऑफ ऑल पॉसिबल वैल्यूज, सारी की सारी जो पॉसिबल वैल्यूज हैं जो उसमें आ सकती हैं या जो उसके अंदर हैं. एक एग्जाम्पल एक और देना चाहूंगा. जिस प्रकार यहां पे जेंडर मेंशन किया गया और जेंडर के अंदर ये व्याख्यान किया गया, जेंडर में ये बोला गया कि जेंडर क्या है, इसके अंदर जेंडर अवेलेबल है, दैट इज अ मेल एंड फीमेल. इट मींस व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द डोमेन ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर फील्ड और एट्रीब्यूट or a column, that is a gender. So it means domain जो उसके अंदर आ सकता है, that is male, female, or somewhat we can consider it as other also, because legally this gender is also supposed to be added. So here we talk about that male, female, and other is supposed to be added in this concept. Thank you. Hope my concept will be, hope my words are easier to understand. And thank you very much, and God bless you, my dear respected students.